And sorry. And do adoption of the public agenda.
So
Move
moved.
adoption.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? The agenda is adopted. Thank you. Any petitions or delegations, Mr. Yates?
No, Mr. Chairman, none that we're aware of.
Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to adopt the previous minutes of May 13th.
Move adoption.
Second.
Discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. And business arising from the minutes. Mr. Leach, I understand that you will have an update on the jersey.
I can
I
speak.
believe Mr. Yates has something.
So we'll put that.
Yeah,
where would you like to put that on the agenda?
Wherever you like.
Mr. Chairman, we can put that under business.
Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback, Mr. Yates. How about if we put that under business arising?
Yeah.
So we've done adoption of the minutes. So business arising, Mr. Leach.
Tom, do you want to speak to the jersey donation?
Certainly. So, Mr. Chairman, the commission may recall there was a written report, a short one, last meeting advising that the current owner of the jersey had indicated a desire to take this to Vancouver for a professional appraisal and then to get back to us after that. And I have communicated or attempted to communicate with him just in the last few days for an update and have not heard back. So I'm assuming it's still his plan, if he's being open about that, to go through a process whereby he can determine independently whether he still wishes to pursue this with the regional district or whether he has a change of heart. And these are matters I don't know at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Any question or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to receive the verbal update.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. And no public considerations, no chair's report, except I just want to convey my appreciation for staff throughout the COVID, but also just the manner of the reports. Councillor Moglev made a comment about how well prepared and well done they were. So please accept that that positive comment. And I would look at staff reports, the Strathcona Gardens restart plan for recreation opportunities for receipt.
Receipt, second.
Sorry, was that you doing?
Secondly.
Okay, who moved it? I'm sorry. Who was the mover?
I think it was Cal and I seconded it. It's Brenda.
Okay, any staff, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Corrine will speak to the restart report.
Great. Good afternoon through the CEO and through the chair to the commission. The report that you have in front of you today is a fairly extensive report on the restart of Strathcona Gardens. It fits in along in line with the SRD's Service for Restoration policy that went forth at the board meeting today, but kind of gives a lot more framework to how we would begin to operate and begin to service the community in terms of this facility. I've broken down the report into several different categories in order to give you a real idea of how those services could be activated under the current conditions. And one thing that I did mention in the report, that this, at the time of the report, it was the most up-to-date information that I had at the time. There are many things that need to be considered, and things change from every hour to every 5 minutes, it feels like. So at the time that the report was written to where we are today, even more information has become available, and I hope to give you as much information as you need in order to make some decisions around moving forward at this facility. To begin with, I really would like to tell you that Ryan, who is also on the line today, the team that we have here in order to do this has started to look at many possibilities within the current guidelines in restarting the province and working with the orders from various agencies. And you will see that we had a number of overarching documents that we've attached to this report. All of this, as you can see, is extensive documentation that we have to review and funnel through to make sure that we are able to open up the facility in a safe manner for the public. One of the guiding principles is that 2 meter distancing. That 2 meter distancing has to be the number one fundamental regulation that we have in order to look at reactivating any of our spaces. This puts real limitations when it comes down to operating places within this facility. The nice thing that we have about Strathcona Gardens is we have 2 NHL-sized arenas that allow for some programs to start to activate in a way that allows for those physical distancing measures to be maintained. There's been a lot of discussion about the 50-person limit and how that might be in future stages and how we could open up. I still want the commission to understand that although we don't have a 50 limit capacity for this facility, we have 50 limit in certain areas. So for example, you could have 50 people on the dry floor space in the arena. You could have 50 people in the pool, and you could have another 50 people in the other arena. That being said, that is with the fundamental thought that you could physical distance within those spaces and that those programs adhere to physical distancing. So the mass gathering order eliminates large renters, spectator sport. Obviously, when it comes down to those physical distancing, that also precludes contact sport of any type in this facility under these current conditions. So when you look at that, I want you to really keep in mind those parameters to give you an idea of physical distancing and how challenging that would be in a facility like Strathcona Gardens. We have areas of this facility that are really tight spaces. If anybody's been to Strathcona Gardens, you know the corridors to the arena, to the dressing rooms are tight. You know the dressing rooms are small. You know that at any one time in some of those arena dressing rooms with physical distancing, you're lucky. We know that we could probably only get 3 in some of those dressing rooms at any one time. The largest dressing room may even have the limitation of 5 or 6 being limited in those areas. So that's a really important note. So whatever kickstart gradual programs under the current conditions, those are some of the things that we have to consider. So when I break down the arena operations under the current conditions, and I want to blanket this, but the current conditions that we have, there's been very few organizations that have stepped up to say that they have a return to play kind of protocol that they could put into place that allows for skill-based development at this point. The skating club is definitely something that does skill-based training facilities for hockey that not for hockey, but hockey development. So I'm talking about skill development, things that could be social distanced on the ice. Those are the type of things that we've heard right now that would be able to be run on the arena floor space with ice in. We also know that we could run community recreation on there in terms of servicing smaller group size camps. We could do a number of things that allow for the physical distancing to be achieved, but things like public skating, those type of things would not happen. I also would like to mention, when we go back to that, how to access the Strathcona Gardens, that would be by a registration or a booking system only. The facility would have to change in order to keep those controls in place to a reserve or booking system only, where we know that there's only X amount of people in this facility at any one time. So I really outlined the arena operations to begin with, and probably I think one of the things that I put in the staff report is that we do have some circumstances with operating a second arena, being that the dehumidifier that's part of the EU, the Energy Recovery Project, has been delayed with COVID-19, which means that Arena 2 would not be really activated, nor would I think be based on our demand at this point, whether Arena 2 would actually be something that could be done until later when that dehumidifier comes in, set to arrive in the late fall of 2020. So with that note, I'll just stop with the arena operations and just answer any questions that people have on the return to arena operations and anything like that before I talk about the aquatic operation. Is there any questions from the commission on arena operations and moving forward?
Chair, a couple of questions. I don't know how you wanted to do this, but I'll put myself in the queue for when we're ready to do questions.
Okay, I would ask that you use the chat feature to let me know, but go ahead, Commissioner Evans.
Thank you so much. And I just want to echo, Chair, the comments that you made at the very beginning. Thank you for such a well thought out report. And I certainly appreciate that at times right now that we're it really is a moving target, and it's difficult to be able to make any final decisions. But my questions are related. I do have questions on the aquatic side, but these questions are more just high-level general questions. I noted in your report that you mentioned that there may be restrictions on the washrooms, and yet throughout the recommendations in the appendices, it talks about how important access to hand sanitization is. What are you thinking in terms of ensuring that whoever's using the facilities, that if you are restricting washrooms, that there still is access to hand sanitization stations? Yeah,
good question. In terms of our limited space, in terms of the washroom, it is to try to eliminate touch points, but allow people to still wash their hands in those spaces. We have secured hand sanitizer throughout this facility in terms of having hand sanitizers on stations in areas. The access to washing your hands would still be available. We're looking at limiting things such as showers and further dressing rooms. Makes it a little bit more complicated in terms of those touch points, but definitely access to hand sanitizing and washing for the hands would be available for all services that were accessed.
Okay, and if I may, thank you, Corinne. If I may, Chair, I'll just continue with my next question.
Commissioner Evans, as long as it's related to the ice, because we're going to get a report on the aquatics.
Okay, again, it's a general question that's related in the first part of the report. Yeah. And that is just with MIABC's recommendations in terms of insurance. Are you confident that the liability risk in terms of having waivers signed and those kinds of things and having agreements, is it your sense in the conversations you've been having with the organizations that this is something that will be in place, or what is your sense in terms of the need to ensure that this is in place before it's opened?
Yeah, I want to make sure that that is covered. Thank you for going through that. Is that any user group that would book the facility after we restore services to Strathcona Gardens, is that the previous contracts that would be in place would be have to be changed. We would have to then issue new contracts to user groups, and those user groups would have to have a COVID-19 exposure control plan that clearly demonstrates how those activities would be done. Now, it's not us having to prove or disapprove those adherences to their plan. They just have to have a plan. It puts us in a risk and liability if we're the ones reviewing their plan, but their plan has to be taken into considerations, the directives of the provincial health officers, the local authorities, and any other regulatory bodies like the WorkSafe BC. So all of those parameters need to be in their exposure control plan. We, through MIABC, they provided us templates that we can put into contracts that allow us to say that we would not be responsible for the transmission of COVID-19, and those would all be added as the COVID transmission mitigation expectations that would go into every user group contract. And that's not only for the ice arena users, that's for anybody using this facility. They would have to have a plan, and they would have to adhere to all of those protocols.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. It's a great report, Corinne. And my feeling is that unless you can totally control the number of people, keep it down to 50, and you have strict control over the 6-foot distancing and hand washing stations and whatnot, I don't think that we should be even thinking of opening anything until September, unless it's a special event like a hockey game or something where you could actually really tightly control how many people and how far apart they were. And you can't control kids not running up to each other, and you won't be able to control that. In the pool or in the ice arena, it's going to be hard unless their parents are there with them. And I just think the liability is really high for Strathcona Gardens because of they have contact tracing. If somebody gets sick, if there's a problem, it's going to come back to us, and we don't have insurance for it. So I think we should take it slow.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Good points, Mr. Rock. The comment that I had was just getting back to Arena 2 and the delays that you were mentioning as a result of the energy recovery. Can you confirm, did I hear that rink wouldn't be operating until the fall?
That's correct. That's correct. We need the dehumidifier to operate Arena 2.
Now, Corinne, didn't you say though you could repair it in a time?
You could repair it, and it is in the report that a repair could be done, but the new piece of equipment is not tentatively set to arrive to the fall.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not clear. I'm hearing two different things. So if the piece, we could repair it, would that mean that we could have ice in Arena 2, or will we wait until the
No, you could. You would just be spending $20,000 to do that, and the new equipment would arrive in the fall.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the aquatic section.
And so with the aquatics operation, this one came at with the direction of the BC Life Saving Society. There is a number of parameters, and it's a little bit more complicated in terms of, I'm sure you will hear, even if you listen to Dr. Bonnie Henry's report as of yesterday, at the last minute of her speech, she talked about the opening of pools and how pools could open because you understand that viruses are not transmitted into the in the actual pool itself. It's a very low risk of that happening. It's all the touch points that lead to the pool. So most of the pools that you will see being opening are outdoor pools, and in the first phase of opening up aquatic facilities, it's about opening up those outdoor pools to those areas that we have some where the outdoor pools have a little bit more spread and a little bit more opportunity to just come as you are to the outdoor pool. Where when it comes into dressing rooms, once again, and going through dressing rooms, the facility would have to be accessed quite differently at Strathcona Gardens. And in the report, I've kind of outlined all of those parameters in which I think that we could do some social distancing and allow for certain activities like lane swimming, recreational type things where you allow that space to be adhered to. And so within this parameters, there's a number of things that we have to think about in terms of donning of the PPE that's required for staff, the first aid when it comes to making sure that we have all of the preventative PPE for our staff that are going to do water rescue. So we would have to make sure those are there. The limitation on people is what really fundamentally limits the amount of people that we could actually have. And you can see that number is quite low, approximately 30 people in the main pool and at any one time. And so it's quite limited. You could have users like competitive swim clubs be in those spaces as long as they're physical distancing and they have those agreements that I talked about previously. So those type of things could be also in there, and you could service your swim clubs and those type of users in the aquatic space. And that's why when I looked at the type of, when Ryan and I looked at that, our first thought was, okay, if we're going to do a gradual start of the aquatic space, it would be the main pool when it is right and we have those things available and an ability to activate that space. We also know that the air handling system in the aquatic space, given the fact that Recreate has been delayed and we're not in a place where those air handling units are at the end of its life, there's a number of testing things that we would have to do on that aquatic space in terms of everybody understands that good ventilation is also important when it comes to the transmission of the virus. So we would want to make sure that we're really doing all of our testing to make sure that the ventilation and parameters on that space allow us to do that and operate that safely. Is there questions about the aquatic space?
I'm not seeing any, which is a testament to the thoroughness of the report. Anything further on the restart plan?
There's a few things I would like to touch on to finalize, Dave, if I have a couple of minutes, but Dave, go ahead, I hear your voice.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Just to quickly, the theme of what we wanted to bring to the commission is, does the commission have an appetite, if following the phase 2, 3, and 4 opening in line with the provincial health regulations and and Recreation BC and so on and so forth. Does the commission have an interest in us pursuing what we can do? Knowing that there's very little economies with that, you know, the revenues will clearly be down, but there may be a few things we can do on ice and water if we put them back. But trying to get the commission's feeling as, you know, do they want us to pursue that or just kind of keep it in shutter down mode for a couple more months?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leach. And before I go to Commissioner Babchuk, I think the other thing for the commission to consider is with the ICE report is that if the new piece of equipment is tentatively set to arrive in late fall of 2020, as per page 4 of the report, and there is a cost of $20,000 to repair it, is there an appetite from the commission to approve that $20,000 to be able to get that ice in and programs operating in Rink 2 as well as Rink 1? And you need to bear in mind that, you know, we're projecting tentatively to arrive in late fall, but who knows how this is going to pan out, and things don't always arrive as to when they might be. So for a $20,000 cost, do we want to assure that we've at least got something to work with? So Commissioner Babchuk.
Thank you. So I think our CAO touched on a piece that I have been a little bit concerned with, and that is in regards to the economic sort of viability when we know that these are already very much subsidized. So, you know, in order to facilitate 30 people in a pool, do we have to pull back into our system every employee? So I'm just wondering, we've had a report at the board about how well the regional district is doing through COVID, and some of the positive pieces of that is because we don't have our staff there, right? Yes, we're losing revenue, but we're actually offsetting a lot of that, especially through our recreation and Strathcona Gardens, with the fact that our staff is not there. So I'm just wondering what that looks like from a sort of an economic point of view, with bringing all the staff back to be able to facilitate a very small number of people.
Through the commission and through the chair, I would like to comment on bringing all staff back. In the report, you will see that the expenses of bringing back staff on a gradual basis is not bringing back all of Strathcona Garden staff. A gradual restart would limit the amount of staff that would be here at any one time. The other thing I would like to provide the commission with in terms of costs and recouping some of the costs, we know that give some examples, because I think it's really important to give some lens to this from other areas too, and what they're seeing for people that have kickstarted some of the programs within recreation facilities similar to Strathcona Gardens. So as of this week, Powell River opened up summer camps. They sold out in 24 hours. They got a net cost of $20,000 in revenue from running summer camps. They're using dry floor space within the arena to run summer camps. This is a real need in a lot of the communities looking for options for childcare. Childcare is one of the things that that we are hearing from the community as where are people going and what kind of things can be done. With the physical distancing limitations, the arenas in their dry floor format provide for such great opportunity to have a broad range of opportunities to provide the community. as it fits right now, with Arena 2 being utilized to do some of our other programming with those physical distancing measures intact, and Ryan can speak to this because I think it's an important factor about what's going on there. And if you decide to put ice in both arenas, what other things you limit in the community from a health and wellness perspective. Down the island, you have heard of many people doing similar things like running outdoor of their facilities within their indoor spaces within the physical distancing measures that are being there. So if I could, I would like Ryan to speak to some of the activities that speak to some of the dry floor activities that might be displaced by instituting other arenas to be open.
Okay,
So
thank you.
just to follow up on that before I go, if I may, Your Worship,
Yeah.
Once again, a distinction between the pool and the arenas, right? I think that the comments around those are a little bit different. I can understand the piece you're talking about with dry floor. I'm just not as convinced with the operations of a pool.
Okay, so yeah, with the operation of the pool, if I could just speak to the staffing requirements, obviously we wouldn't bring back all staff in there. And yes, there's definitely a financial part of this in which the capacity of a pool eliminates the ability to kind of support the feasibility of putting in water into a pool. Once again, it's about a service to this community. And other activities that you are able to do in there, and servicing some of the more vulnerable populations that use it for our CDM programs and island health programs that we have used for therapy and those kind of things. So where we're trying to put into that into this as well is that there are a number of things that happen in the aquatic space. Doesn't mean it's financially the most under these limitations. You have to consider that, but I wanted to make sure that you know that what we would do there, and that the limitation of the amount of guards on the pool deck, we don't change the number of guards on the pool deck that would required for that pool, but because those numbers are so low, you wouldn't need to activate as many lifeguards to run that.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Before I go to Commissioner Gunnerud, Ryan, if you want to provide an update on to dry floor programming.
Yes, good afternoon, Commission. Thank you very much. So the dry floor programming, taking a look at arena number 2, that space, we've been working on a number of different programs and how we can utilize that area to maintain physical distancing and still offer services to the community. So on June 4th, the Director of Clinical Services Delivery with Island Health has given us permission to restart, or we were never ordered to stop, but we've received their blessing to continue with our chronic disease management program, which definitely serves a vulnerable population within the facility. Just today, I was down at the grocery store, and they had one of the patrons had asked, when's the CDM program starting up again? So we're certainly getting a large number of inquiries and still receiving referrals from the hospitals from those programs. And we're looking at starting up those. We've moved equipment down into the floor space to ensure we have the physical distancing needed there, as well as we've moved a significant amount of equipment from our gym space down to part of Arena 2 as well. And we have set up 8, we call them exercise pods, where individuals can book their own private space, which is about 440 square feet each, which gives people over that 5 meter squared area where they can exercise safely and efficiently in that area. We would be activating 3 indoor pickleball courts at this point in time. It's been very popular, pickleball, and with the weather that we had yesterday, we think it would be very worthwhile for people to be able to come indoors and have that option to play. And then finally, we still plan, although it will look very different, to start our summer camps July 13th. So those will be primarily outdoor, but again, if we have more dry floor areas, that would just give us a little bit more flexibility to be able to run some of those programs. Because again, those are going to be smaller group programs. We're not going to be able to run programs where there was 12, 15 youth in each program. It would be limited to more like 5 in those. So those are 4 specific programs that really rely on the dry floor space to serve the public. We would be, for those programs running that I've mentioned so far, we would be bringing onto the staff at this point in time 3 more staff members just to run those 4 programs in addition. So they're relatively cost effective as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gunner.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Corrine, for the report. And there's a lot of info to absorb in there, that's for sure. And as per David's question, I am in favor of the plan to partially open dry floor, ice, and the pool. As long as we have the sports organization's guidelines are in place, which you spoke about earlier, Corrine, and a commitment from the local user groups on the hours that would be required, so that we try and benefit financially as much as possible from these guidelines that we have to all abide by. The one question I have is points of entry, the doors, to limit the number of visitors or looky-loos or just people who want to go in and use the washroom. Would we have to set up something similar to the hospital where they have 2 people staffing a table at the door, where you come in and you get asked a few questions, and if you want to use the washroom, this is not the place to use the washroom?
That's correct. So good question, Cal. Yeah, in the guidelines, obviously I didn't expect anybody to read all through there. There are protocols in terms of screening that would have to happen on site, and limiting the door access would only happen through limited access. Although as we open up facilities, what we want to try to do is limit touch points. And so that would also be considered. But according to a graduate, like in order to kickstart our facility with a gradual start, we would have just the main doors that would be open for the reservation and booking systems only. And so unless you're booked in here or unless you're reserved into here, you would not be accessing Strathcona Gardens. That would be a way to do that, so that people understand that. Of course, our messaging and our public messaging going out, whether it's in social media or the newspaper and other avenues, to try to tell people that this is just not the place that you just drop in because you have to go to the washroom or you just want to sit and hang out. That's not the type of model that this employs, given the current conditions. So that would be one thing to really note, that everything would have to be that kind of streamlined process.
Thank you.
Commissioner Evans? Commissioner Evans, you there? Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Babchuk.
Thank you. I am, like, once again, just with the CDM program, what happens with them in the summer when generally we're shut down?
So they go typically to the outdoor pool. And one of the things that I would like to say about the CDM program and other things in the pool, one of the things that is noted in there is that the outdoor pool is closed for the season here. So there are some questions about what kind of aquatic space are activated. Locally, what I have heard is the same conversations that are happening at our commission level today, is that many are looking at a September possible start. including the Comox Valley Regional District looking at a later start. They're looking at an earlier start for the arenas, for at least one sheet of the arena. But the aquatic, they're not looking to the fall. Even though you could be the only one gradually opening up the aquatic space, doesn't mean that could have more people in the pool. So that's one thing to consider, is that even if you're the only person in town opening that area, we couldn't put any more people in at any one time. That being said, if there's no aquatic spaces north of the island, it becomes very limited for people who rely on aquatic therapy or aquatic-based programming to access anything for their health and wellness requirements. So that's something that we do in the summertime, use the outdoor pool for a limited time and for those programs. And if you want more information, Ryan can give you a little bit of an overview.
Okay, and just to add to that, just because I have in the past used the facilities for rehabilitation purposes, I do believe that there's opportunity to look at private providers as well. And at one point, I believe they were being sent down to what was the old Best Western in there. But I do have to say that the dry floor in the arenas, I totally get. I am still a little bit iffy on the pool. I guess, you know, I guess my biggest concern is that, you know, we're not coming out ahead or falling behind anybody else. That becomes a political nightmare for us. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're safe and can provide everything. And I'm just not quite convinced that we can do that in the aquatic portion.
And Chair,
thank you, Councillor Evans or Commissioner Evans.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, somehow this was doing an update and I couldn't get back to you. I think Commissioner Babchuk spoke to some of the questions that I had with regards to the pool, but I was interested to know, I guess my concern is that I certainly appreciate that we're going to have communication out there, not just to drop by, but 30 people in a pool is not a huge number of people. And you get one birthday group of a group of 10 and all of a sudden you're a third of the way full. So would you have a registration for any activity in the pool where you absolutely had to pre-book that time? And I imagine staff would figure out a way to monitor, you know, sort of what is a full hour or whatever allocation of time. But I also wanted to ask, I see that in your report and in some of the other facilities that they do structured laps, and that seems to be something that is easier to monitor. I'm wondering if you could just speak to both of those points, please.
Great. I think with an overview of this, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan. Ryan, would you speak on this?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Evans. Very good question, and you're exactly right. Any programming that would be going into the pool as well, if and when the pool first opens, would be by registration only. That's where we're looking at right now. Again, trying to stay ahead of the curve, if you would, just from a planning perspective. So it would be, for example, let's say from opening for the first 3 hours, it might be you book your own lanes and you have your own lane swims, and some pools have done that. And then after that, it might be, okay, the Killer Whale Swim Club comes in and they have the pool for a specific time. So absolutely, yes, there would definitely be by registration only, the same as the rest of the facility. Okay, thank you. And if I may, with respect to what Commissioner Babchuk was asking about before, talking about the CDM program, a lot of the individuals in the summer during the pool shutdown, we do have a number of people that will take part in some of the dry land programs if they are able to, and we'll move over to our up to the studio, as well as, because there is some continuation of the dry land, just that the pool itself is shut down over the summer. So there is some overlap there as well.
Okay. Commissioner Evans, does that answer your queries?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chair. That's just great. Thank you, staff.
Thank you. The only question that I have, both to Corinne and Ryan, is, first of all, the Centennial Outdoor Pool will not be opening at all this year. That has been confirmed from the city of Campbell River. But that being said, all of the tennis courts have been opened to date. I'm wondering if there have been discussions between Strathcona Garden staff with the Sportsplex and Community Center staff, in that if other facilities are opening that can accommodate some of the dry floor activity, are we looking at the bigger picture of the community as to revenue opportunities? Yeah. And then I'll give you a chance to respond, and then I'll go to Commissioner Lee.
So in terms of collaboration with the city, we continue to be in contact with our partner in the city of Campbell River and understanding their unique challenges that they have there. They do have some uniqueness as they've redeployed some of their staff and those kind of things. What our understanding is that they're not activating some of those things right away. So that any kind of restart, obviously, our communication and dialogue would help to support and broaden what the community does. But at this point, we haven't been abreast of anything that they're activating for the summer in terms of programs. And so that kind of leaves it to us to say, okay, well, what kind of opportunities can we provide here, knowing that there's limited opportunities throughout the community. But at this point, I don't believe that has changed. And our programmers and Ryan, with his leadership on that team, has definitely been in contact regularly with the team to make sure that we're both on the same page and that we're collaborating wherever possible.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
Thank you, Chair. And I would just like to say that I think that this COVID crisis has provided a bit of an opportunity for us. This is happening in the summertime right now, the period that we're talking about reopening. Speaking from my community's point of view, which is not within Campbell River, my community supports Strathcona Gardens, and my community has access to beautiful white sandy beaches down here. We have lakes, we have rivers, we have lots of places to swim in the summertime. And I think we should be using this time when we're down to do all the renovations that need to be done and clean the place up before the fall, such as maybe putting a pool liner in the pool. If we're not going to get our grant or a big grant to do the recreate, we could line the pool before the fall, have a nice clean liner that doesn't leak. We could have the roofing, the HVAC systems all in, and air exchangers all done. And we could really clean the place thoroughly and make it ready for September. I mean, just because you open something such as the schools opening doesn't mean you're going to get a lot of people. Maybe the camps filled up within 24 hours, but the schools only had 20% subscription to going back to school before the fall. Parents do not want their kids to catch this disease. And the people that are in the chronic disease programs, they're the vulnerable ones. We don't want them to catch the disease. And even though it looks like it's eradicated, it could pop up again, and there's no cure. It's a dangerous thing for people. And I really think that we should, far be it from me to tell our excellent staff how to operate these facilities, because I feel like as a politician, we're delving into the operational side of things by setting parameters. But from a risk management point of view, from an opportunity to upgrade the facilities in the summer point of view, from the fact that we can't put too many people in any of the programs anyway, and we're going to incur quite large costs to, staff those programs. I just think we should set our minds to opening, in the fall when it's safe, and make sure we get all of our work done, all of our upgrades and everything done while things are shut down. And, people are suffering. I know they want to do these, everybody's dying to get together, and they're dying to go into sports and activities, and, everyone is. But I think that we need to be sensible. It's, it's not something we're going to fling the doors open and everybody's coming in. It's going to be very controlled. And I just don't, if there's an event that you could put on that was very controlled, that could keep people 6 feet apart, that could keep them from, sharing the virus, those are probably good things, but they're going to be very limited before the fall. I think we should use the opportunity to really focus on, finishing our work in that facility.
Okay. Good points, Commissioner Lee. I think staff have heard the message that there is some trepidation and caution around the pool, but really appreciate the work and know that you use some of the summer shutdown to take advantage of those maintenance and operation opportunities every year. So would anticipate you continuing to do so. Ms. Garak or Mr. Leach or Ryan, anything further?
Well, I think you characterized it well in that there seems to be some apprehension about the pool, and we were, just looking for some direction from the commission in that, if we want to, Director Babchuk is correct, like it's a subsidized facility. Revenues would be down for ice activities. We know that. We've saved a lot of money in other terms. It's not like we're going to go in the hole or it's going to break the bank for it, but just as a philosophical approach, does the commission support moving forward with, the ice to get things going, regardless of some of the economic issues that may be associated with it, like i.e. there won't be as much revenue generated, but we can get some things going, if that's the will of the commission. And these are all conditional upon the stages of reopening that the province sets on and the health authorities. So, conditional to all those, does the commission support us looking to do what we can on the ice? It sounds like the pool, not so much.
And when you say ice, you're referring to Arena 1?
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Babchuk?
Thank you. And when I read through the report, there are options in there. So I'm wondering if are we still on receipt, Your Worship?
We are.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if after we do receipt, if it would help staff to actually have a motion that is incorporated in the options that are on page 2 of the front report, if that would help in some way.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so after receipt, I'll have a subsequent motion.
Okay, thank you. So I think we are at the point of receipt, unless I hear otherwise from commission members that they need more information. So is anyone opposed on receipt? That is carried. Commissioner Babchuk, subsequent.
Okay, so I'd like to move that the commission supports in principle the plan to reopen the Brindamore Arena following the procedures and protocols within the SRD service restoration policy.
Second.
Discussion.
So I'd just like to add, I added in principle because there's still a lot of questions, I think, that are involved with the actual user groups that Commissioner Gunnerud brought up. And I do like the idea that we are looking at the most vulnerable population of kids in regards to summer camps or you know, being able to get those recreational facilities open for our public. So I am not opposed to looking at dry land stuff at all. So that's sort of where I'm looking at for this one.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? So anybody in opposition, and again, this is the reopening of the Rod Brindamore Arena following the procedures and protocols. Hearing none, that is approved. Anything further from the commission? That motion was specific to Arena 1. Do you want to have a subsequent for staff to use their discretion in the reopening of or use of Arena 2 for dry floor activities? And further, commission, I will entertain thoughts or direction regarding the pool.
So if I can, the pool has a, you know, a support and a not support. So either of those we'd be open to getting the commission's feeling on that.
Yep. Commissioner Babchuk?
So, Your Worship, like I said before, I am still a little bit concerned about how we move forward with the pool. I understand actual pool activity. I'm still very concerned about getting in and getting out of the pool, touch points, bathrooms, facilities, the whole 9 yards. So I'm actually going to move that the commission does not support the plan to reopen the aquatic main pool space following the procedures and protocols within the SRD service restoration policy.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Would you like to put at this time or until such time that staff provide further information?
Yeah, I'll go with at this time. I think that leaves it open should something drastically change. If that's okay with my seconder.
Absolutely, and I just think that makes more sense. As Corrine mentioned at the very beginning of this meeting, things are changing very quickly, and I think that gives some flexibility that if things improve over the summer or we see some major changes taking place, we have the ability to have another recommendation from staff. But at this time, I think putting that at this time makes sense.
Staff, does that provide sufficient direction for you?
Yeah, that's perfect for us. Yeah.
Ms. Garak? Silence is golden. We're good.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So anybody opposed to the motion? I'll take that as carried, and I have another subsequent from Commissioner Granerud regarding the use of Arena 2.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, if I can ask the commissioner, does that kind of lean towards not doing the repairs on the dehumidifier and focusing on dry land activities for Arena 2?
My question would then be through the chair, through to Corrine, on a time of repairs to the dehumidifier. Would it need to be down, no use for 1 week, 1 month, a number?
Right. We could actually get that, if we could order that and get it here and the repair done so that it could be activated. So you could do that repair and then it would be up and ready to run when you wanted it to be at any given time between now and late fall when the new one comes. So if you wanted to continue with a repair, if you don't repair it, then you would have no other choice but to wait till the new dehumidifier came in.
Correct, but the use of Arena 2 for dry land is not.
It doesn't need it. It's only to make the ice cow.
Right. Okay.
So my motion is to use Arena 2 for dryland activities pending the guidelines. And at some period in time, if we approve repairing the dehumidifier, the arena would be, the dry floor would be shut down for a week or whatever period of time it took to repair the dehumidifier.
It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take like that long, but it does take time now to get parts and bring that in. And those timelines right now are the ones that we are challenged with in terms of receiving supplies and product.
So if I can interject here, am I hearing again that the commission supports the use of Arena 2 for dry floor activities, not dry ice, at this time? Because again, that sort of leaves it that should things change as they are daily, that we can revisit this at the next meeting should that change.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yes, well, let's go first to Commissioner Gunnerud, and then is there a seconder for the motion? And then I'll go to Commissioner Babchuk and then Lee.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Babchuk and then Lee.
Thank you. And I'll certainly support Commissioner Grunnerud's motion regarding dry floor activities. But at this particular point in time, knowing that that facility would have normally been closed and knowing that we are going to be looking at the fall for that dehumidifier, I won't be supporting spending $20,000 extra to do that. So if we can use Arena 2 for dry floor activities, then without that dehumidifier, then I'm all for that.
Commissioner Lee?
Well, I was just wondering if there was any chance of, instead of opening the building and letting people into Arena 2, we have this gigantic parking lot. Couldn't we make some kind of, put up some kind of walls so that people can do pickleball and run around and do like floor activities outside on the asphalt if they want to? I mean, that's what we do at Hagel Park. They have a multi-use play area. They can play hockey or basketball or whatever outside, and they can social distance, and they don't have to go inside a building and walk down narrow passageways and use washrooms and all the touch points attached to the inside of the building. I just don't think that people need, I think they need to be safe before they get exposed inside a building. And we have this dehumidifier to put in. We should be looking after those things while we're shut down. So I don't think I can support that idea.
Okay. Any comments from staff or commission members?
So just a comment on the dehumidifier, just to, even though the Arena 2 would have activities on it, you could still do the repair of the dehumidifier while activities were on there. So that could happen. So that would be something that we've already taken into consideration. The repair of the dehumidifier could be done without. Yeah.
This motion says to me, though, that the commission doesn't support the repair to focus on dry floor activities.
No.
Okay. Thank you. And just in response to Commissioner Lee, all of the outdoor courts are open, and the lacrosse box at Rob Run and other areas. So I think there is adequate. I think what we're hearing from staff is that there is a desire or some opportunities for revenue and people looking to also come indoors to utilize that space. So on the motion, is anyone opposed?
One.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee opposed. Anybody further? Hearing none, that motion is carried. Anything further on the restart plan?
No, other than Commissioner Evans and Gunnerud, who weren't at our board, that the board has adopted a restart plan and policy and procedures that the Strathcona Gardens is building upon, and that just happened an hour ago. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Yates, is that sufficient that we can move on, or is there anything further required?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. My only comment would be, I really appreciate the comment that the dehumidifier could be repaired while maintaining dry floor activities if there were revenue opportunities that or significant delays in the replacement of the dehumidifier. I would hope that staff would bring that information back at the earliest convenience so that we could reconsider the clause at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there is significant delays to the new dehumidifier, we'll have no choice but to repair the old one anyways. And yeah, if we do get requests, things change and there's more demand and the health regulations and the situation gets better, certainly we'll come back to the commission.
Thank you. Wolfgang?
Yeah, good afternoon. With regards to the schedule that I'm waiting for my contractor, I'm expecting this master document to come to my hands within the next week. We're having the shop drawings approved. We will be communicating with suppliers and we will have firm dates when these dehumidifiers are arriving to the city of Campbell River. Right now, what we anticipate is that the dehumidifier will be in October 2020. So any changes to these due to COVID-19, I will be providing Corinne and everybody else in this meeting an update.
Excellent. Thank you for that additional information. Very helpful. So moving on, is there no correspondence? Any commissioner reports?
Move that the addenda be considered.
Thank you. Anybody opposed to receiving the addendum? That's carried. So on the Alberni Valley Bulldogs ice request, or
I'll move that the June 8th, 2020 correspondence from Chair Adams regarding the Alberni Valley Bulldogs ice request be received.
Second.
Discussion?
I think it's pretty straightforward, Chair, that they are potentially looking for some ice, and I have not heard back from the Alberni Valley Bulldogs since this correspondence of a week ago.
Okay. And then just through to staff, with the previous motions that have been made, the only option would be Arena 1 at this point.
Yeah, and it would have to follow the adherence of those regulations. So it could not be like a game of hockey happening on the ice. Mm-hmm.
Correct. It would just be literally drills at physical distance.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So on any further discussion on receipt? Seeing none. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Motion to move to closed session.
So moved. To
Second.
receive the CAO's report first.
Second.
On receipt, anybody opposed? That's carried. Commissioner
And
Lee?
move to go in camera. That the meeting be closed to the public to consider matters to fall within the parameters of subsections 91C and O of the community charter.
Second.
Anybody opposed? That is carried, and that's carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody want to stay longer?
No.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and be safe.
Everybody play safe.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.